Louisiana versus all y'all, Jarrett Roser here with Eddie Bonine, the Executive Director of the Louisiana High School Athletic Association, as we get through the first round of state championships for sports like volleyball, cross country, and swimming, and now turn the page from regular season to playoffs for football. It's been obviously an extremely weird year, going all the way back to the spring and having to make some tough decisions with those spring sports. Eddie, how are things going for you guys right now? I know it's been a ton to manage.
It's been busy. It's been a good experience. And again, thank you for reaching out to have this conversation with you, Jared. Appreciate that. Gosh, where do I begin? You know, it's been everybody, but I guess I would start with stating that I want to commend all of our member schools, starting with the kids, the coaches, all the sports medicine personnel, the local regional doctors in cooperation with the Louisiana Department of Health, all of those individuals, and then of course the athletic directors and school administration, all the way to the superintendency. Everybody to a person has wanted to participate and felt it's important that education-based athletics get back into the swing of things. And nobody knows that better than you and others that cover sports in the state of Louisiana, but also nationwide. And there's been things that we've done in Louisiana that have been leading the nation and what we've done, especially knowing the fact of the cases that we've had. And I'd say cases meaning COVID-19 cases that we had way back starting, in March and being one of the hot spots. But everybody, it's been a group effort. Has there been some hiccups along the way? Absolutely. Did we know that there was going to be some hiccups along the way? Absolutely. How you handle those hiccups and how our membership has handled those hiccups goes into that commending piece of what they've been able to do with guidance, not only from the Department of Education, but also through the Department of Health and the regional doctors and everything we've had to do, man. We've kept it under control in regards to the demographics and population that we deal with, which are ninth graders through 12th graders. And I think the numbers show that. So have we had some cancellations? Absolutely. Have we had some games made up? Absolutely. But we've just been kind of shifting as the sand does in the desert through this whole process. And here we sit with, as of today and tomorrow, 3 of our 4 fall sports will be completed. Our assistant executive directors, starting with cross country and Adam McDowell, and then rotating into volleyball, volleyball with Karen Hoyt. And then now we have Michael Federico going with what he's got going on now in state swimming in Northern Louisiana. It's been a learning experience, one of which hopefully we won't have to implement when we get past the beginning of the year, or at least through this school year, depending upon remedies and potential vaccinations and stuff we have with COVID-19. But all the principals and superintendents and all the staff and all the teachers and everybody getting academics first has been a challenge, and you probably know that. But what they've been able to do with that, implementing multiple platforms of educational instruction and delivery, not so sure I could be a principal today with what they've had to do. They don't envy that. Sometimes I get that, Eddie, we don't envy the position you and your staff have in trying to keep sports rolling, but in return, I don't envy them. We're balancing volleyballs, basketballs, baseballs, footballs. They've got more than that balls in the air when it comes to juggling what they have to do on a daily basis, and reporting COVID and the contact trace and all the direct contact versus the indirect contact when it comes to contact trace, and sending students home and providing them with some kind of virtual learning while they're home. Wow. Our people have stepped up and did it. And here we sit talking about last week of football, 8-game season, delay of start, last week of regular season, brackets being posted on Sunday. Here we go, and the numbers climbing, if you will, in Louisiana, and having the address from our leader, our governor yesterday, and where we stand with that is still the uncertainty of what that's going to look like, Jared. So, he's talking about, well, we can take it just a month at a time. When we were in COVID lockdown, then it became a week at a time. And then recently, as well as I, it's become a day at a time. And while you and I are talking, it could be changing as information I give you could very well be something that's not going to be happening an hour from now. So as an opening, hopefully that kind of covered that part of where we are and we're thankful for what we're doing right now. I got a great staff and good membership out there that have been busting their tail to make sure that they can continue to play. And that's kind of where we sit today.
Yeah, no doubt. Just a couple minutes ago, with my work covering LSU, we were still waiting to see if a football game tomorrow was going to happen as they're waiting to get on the plane. So it just, things change so quickly for everyone right now.
And on my drive in this morning, has there been a decision made since I got to the office? I don't know. I haven't been paying attention.
It started leaking out that they are confirming they're ready to get on the plane, and they're planning to have that game tomorrow based on some test results coming through for Arkansas this morning.
And the coach, Arkansas's coach, is he back yet, or is he still in his 14-day?
Yeah, he got back to the office a couple days ago.
Wow. Well, go Tigers.
When you arrived to this role a couple years ago, you knew that there were challenges waiting, but nothing could have prepared you or anyone else for this. Had there been any past instances or challenges or hurdles, whether at your time at the LHSAA or previously, that you did kind of look back to lessons that somehow translated in terms of the level of flexibility you guys had to have with this, or little, I mean, you've had some mantras through the years with the whiteboard, or you mentioned, things changing like sand, anything that you kind of have come back to throughout this to kind of keep things propelling forward toward where we are now?
That's a good question. Believe me, I've had some time to reflect on that. First of all and I'm glad that you think I've been here 2 years, because believe it or not, I'm starting my 6th year with the LHSAA. Time flies when you're having fun. But I've had to deal with some natural disasters, nothing like hurricanes. Coming from the West Coast, we had wildfires and earthquakes. Those two themselves, they ambush you. Yeah. Sitting, and I kid with my colleagues from the West, as I said, here, you see who's getting ready to kick your tail, because that hurricane starts way out there, and it's 5 days, and then it's 3 days, and then it gains strength and it loses strength, and then they do all the strands to tell you where it might be hitting. So you're going to get your butt kicked. You just don't know when and how bad. I said, so I've had some preparation, but just all the years of being a school principal and working at the central office, or a parish office, if you will, as an assistant superintendent, it prepares you for some of it, Jared, but I don't think anybody in the nation, as we see, including local governments, were ever prepared for a pandemic and what it brings, and how you're going to deal with it, and how severe is it going to be, and how serious do you need to take it, and just having the abilities to surround yourself with people to help you with that. And I think the silver lining may be for me, but it may not be for everybody. And I call it all the acronyms, the LASS, which is the Louisiana Association of School Superintendents, the LDOE, the LDH, the State School Boards Association, the LHSAA, including portions of the legislature, and then just everybody. We all were all with the same stakeholders for the most part. In this case, our students across the state, K through 12. We all were in our lanes, all going the same direction in a safe manner. We all knew what our job would be, but it's opened up a tremendous line of communication between all of those acronyms I just told you, which I think is a positive. Maybe we had it to a certain degree because we all knew how to individualize, communicate with one another, but as a unit or as a group, I don't think we've had that. And starting with our state school superintendent, Dr. Brumley, that would be a good question to ask him that you asked me. Hey, Doc, when you took over 3 weeks after he got the job is when we, all of this hit again. So yeah. He's had his hands full, as has the governor, as has Dr. Welch and all the epidemiologists across our state. So I think it's been not only in Louisiana, but everybody, Jared, across the United States, it's been a challenge as assistant directors and directors of state associations. Unfortunately, some have taken it on the chin where they're close to shutting down. We generate revenue. That's part of what we do. We want to hold nice championship events and venues. That's what we do. They're not free. So it's working toward all of that. It's been a challenge, but just having thick skin and patience has been something that I think I've learned over time in my career and not being knee jerk, not getting wrapped up in social media. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that, a lot of people will throw something out there and see if it sticks and then find out, well, maybe I shouldn't or not. But, it is what it is, and it's the hand we've dealt. And I will say to you in this interview, you've always, when you were working prep sports and obviously working what you're doing now and at the collegiate level, you've always been fair, and you've been a reporter. You're the guy that if you hear something, you contact somebody and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing, dude. What's your side of this thing before I get to the keyboard and start throwing it out there. So those have all been challenges, but overall, I think all of us have worked diligently to try to go the right direction with this. And we'll be glad someday when it's over, and we'll look back at it. And, what the good Lord says, right? If it doesn't kill you, makes you better and it's tougher. And that's kind of where we are now, so I think that's what I've taken out of all this.
I was kind of curious there have been so many rumors at different points, whether in the summer or during the season or now with football state championship location stuff. Has that surprised you at all, or in just today's world and with so much in flux throughout this, has the amount of it surprised you, or is that kind of where we are in 2020?
I think you just said it's where we are in 2020. Nothing surprises me anymore, dude. It really doesn't, and things that I supposedly said or things that we did, or I've always, as we move forward here, and I said this publicly and I'll say the same to you, I learned from what we did for state boys basketball and how that felt, having state championship games in an empty arena to the point where you could hear the shoes, the sneakers on the floor chirping. That was weird. But to a coach and a kid, they were appreciative of the fact that we continued forward with the championships and were able to do so. We were one of the last events in the nation that still held within the guidelines given in our state, held that event. And then, of course, the following Wednesday, we're moving out of this office. We're going,
right.
Shelter in place. We're leaving and going and working out of our homes for 6 weeks, thinking maybe it was going to be a 2-week. It was a 14-day, and then it became 21 days, and then it became another 14, then it became another 21, and as we worked our way through it. So when we finally got to where we could do this, our staff remembered the feeling we had, not only in our stomach, but our heart and our head, when we had to cancel spring sports. And then on a personal note, my kid's graduation gets canceled. And they sent people around to your door to hand you your, representing the school, which is a cool thing, to hand our kid their diploma, all the stuff that they lost from all of that. And we remembered that. So as we moved forward and got this thing moving, I didn't want to get out ahead of something to where the point I had to reel it back and cancel. And I've stayed away from the F word, which was forfeit, and I stayed away from the C word, which is cancellation, to where we sit today. And we have stayed within the guidelines and the mitigating measures that we've needed. We're sending another communication out today as we roll deeper into basketball. We start holidays. We start the holiday tournaments. We've got, we're sending out hey, by the way, we're still at 25% occupancy in the gymnasium. If we are still in phase 3, so we're at 50% or 50, static group of 50 down on the gym floor. But if something happens and we get rolled back to 25 to phase 2, now we're at 25 static group on the gym floor. We're trying to make everybody aware of that. And hey, by the way, there's still social distancing with your 25% in the gymnasium. You need to still be wearing masks. We still need to do everything, which is what we heard from our Governor Edwards yesterday. We've got the measures in place. We still need to adhere to those. So we're sending a communication out today as we move into Thanksgiving and then eventually into Christmas. But in the meantime, those 2 holidays roll around, and we, starting that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday after Christmas, are anticipating the Prep Classic. So a lot of stuff, a lot of COVID can happen between now and then. With it seems to be the Halloween, the 4th of July, Labor Day. It always seems that there's some kind of a holiday, not just in Louisiana, but Louisianans are known for family and friends, man. And that's what we still try to pull off and still try to do. And I think it ends up being an issue. I can tell you this, that the cases of COVID we've had, 1 here, 2 there, 3, with football teams, volleyball teams, cheerleading, whatever, they're not getting it from their peers at school.
Right.
They're catching it outside the system. So if we could, in the real world, put everybody like the NBA did and put everybody in a bubble, which is what the NCAA is thinking about doing right now with the Final Four, they're talking about bubbling everybody, at least on the men's side in Indianapolis, potentially the women's in San Antonio. Big issue. We can't do that. But I know that a lot of schools, as we got past the minimum for football, you got to have had 4 games and set the standards. Some of these schools, don't blame them at all, have taken their athletes. Volleyball was one, not so much cross country, but volleyball. Some swimming schools, but specifically football schools, have taken their athletes and put them on virtual learning.
Right.
Don't blame them if they're capable of doing it, so that they're not mingling with the general population. Now, the naysayers and the chagrin of some say, wait a minute. So you're saying that they don't go to school? No, they're going to school. They're just staying home, and then they're going to football practice. So now we're trying to do that controlled environment, if you will. So a lot of people getting creative with that. Don't blame them at all. I'm hoping that we can get through with no more hiccups. The last thing I want, Jared, is we get the bracket posted this Sunday, the march to the Prep Classic, and all of a sudden someone's COVID, and as you know, they're coming off the bracket. That team, their opponent, automatically rolls to the next step. So things you dread in this role, but as we get past this week, this Friday night, Friday, Saturday, and get to the bracket, then that's part of the nature of this beast. So it's been a process, a learning process, but I think a lot of people have displayed patience and used common sense, and I think that's where we are today.
I think that last piece that you mentioned about the football brackets and the fact that we've obviously had to see some cancellations during the regular season, and if someone has to do that in the playoffs, the team that they would be matched up against moves forward, is caught a lot of attention. But was there any real alternative to that, considering how disjointed and extended things would have to get if you tried to give teams an opportunity to come back from quarantines? It seems like it's just sort of it does present challenges where we are now, but that there's not really a lot of alternative to what could have been done there. It's just kind of where we have to be to finish anything in any sort of reasonable or realistic timeline.
We did, and we put a lot of thought in that. You mentioned one of my little quirks is the whiteboard. We had a lot of stuff on the whiteboard, literally in the office next door to me here, on what it would look like. We had a 5-game proposal, season proposal, a 6-game proposal, a 7-game proposal, and an 8-game proposal. And when we came out of that executive committee day and have everybody had a chance to talk about it, it was more about, we just want to have a season.
Mm-hmm.
We warned and we spoke specifically, if we do an 8-game season, you don't have any wiggle room if you have any COVID related issues. If you have a 7-game season, it gives you a little wiggle room because you got that date that you could work with. 6-game, you got more. You got that 14-day build in. But if you got a case, you cut the COVID case, the true positive case, you cut it from the herd. Then you contact trace with the herd, what you got left. You have enough hats and helmets left to participate. That's stuff that we talked about. But it seemed to be, we just want a season. And let's wait till the postseason and see what it looks like. Well, 3 weeks ago, we brought up and says, okay, we're here. And guess what? We haven't got a lot of wiggle room. So you wanted a season. Some of you are getting 8 games in. And we had the percentage of schools that did and did not. We only had at less than 10 schools of all of our football schools. We only had 10 schools left that didn't meet the minimum 4 games played. And they're trying to get those in. As I sit here today, I don't believe potentially anybody that could be on the bracket is not going to get on the bracket because they haven't played 4 games. Eric Kell, the director of the Coaches Association, I had a meeting this morning, and I'm looking, if you've been in my office, I got a small whiteboard over behind my door. He came in and put potentially what that bracket would look like and who if you were an odds maker, who could potentially be on that bracket. And nobody's name on there that's not going to make it because they didn't have the 4 games. So when we did all that, Jared, we'd planned, and there's no way to adjust it. We had that conversation with volleyball, and we had, I think, 4 or 5 schools that dropped off the bracket early in volleyball before we got to the Pontchartrain Center because they had COVID, and they had to pull themselves off of it. It is what it is. So it's just, again, it's part of the deal we have, but when we locked ourselves into making sure we had more games than not, then okay. We had some proposals that said, let's try to play 10 games and not worry about postseason.
Right.
Let's just get in 10 games. We might have a district champ, we might not. Well, you know as well as I do, nobody played enough district games to have a district champion, so we're not doing that, to the chagrin of some. And it just was kind of ironic, Jared, and I mean this in a nice way, is that, you know, I had to go down and testify. It got into the legislature. I had to go down and testify in front of both ed committees and try to let them know what we're trying to do, and we're going to try to do it safely. And the majority of the state wanted to make sure we had a football season. If I had $1 for every email I got, Mr. Bonine, please just let them play. Just let them play. Just let them play. You and I and anybody you want to invite up to 5 people, anybody I want to invite up to 5, we could go to Ruth Chris and still have money left over. Okay, that was the mantra, and we did it, and here we sit today. But it didn't. But if everybody kind of forgot about the thankfulness that we got of getting the season, and now all of a sudden it shifted to, well, what about trophies? What about? Well, I get it, and we're going to try to make it happen. But we're not there yet, Jared. Anything could happen, whether it be more restrictions put on us from the governor's office because we can't get control of this thing right now. We get past Thanksgiving, 14 days after Thanksgiving. Now, if you look at the calendar, that's pushing toward the semifinals, dude. Mm-hmm. The governor could very well tell us something different, could affect the attendance that we have of an event that we have or have not. So all of that stuff has been taken into consideration. And sleepless nights, absolutely. More cups of coffee than a man or a woman should drink? Absolutely. But we're where we are today, and we're going to try to hopefully keep our fingers crossed that we don't have double eliminations, where we not only have the school, but both schools that are supposed to be on the bracket, they both can't play. We don't have any wiggle room. We don't, and that's where we sit today, and that's what we're gonna live with.
As you move forward toward that end of hopefully being in a state championship event those few days after Christmas, with your fingers crossed and kind of keeping an eye on all those things you're talking about, what will be, and I mentioned there have been rumors about could the games have to be in another location than the Dome and things like that. What will be those determining factors, and what would be a timeline that you would have to know the details on to make sort of a move like that? Does it all hinge upon what the governor says, and I guess for New Orleans the mayor as well, and are there other factors that you guys have to consider in terms of a crowd size versus financial cost or gain from ticket sales or any of those sort of things, and when do those decisions potentially need to be made?
Good question, and good timing for that question as well. So I met with when I was down for state volleyball, while I was in New Orleans, I went and met with the management company of AMS, which was SMG, but the contract says as SMG, to discuss what we could or couldn't do when it comes to the Superdome. As I sit here today, I have no idea what if any, crowd allowance will be allowed for the Superdome, number one. Number two, what we're asking, the measures we would have to do at the Superdome. First one would be, there would be single game ticket sales. There would be no buy one ticket and sit there for 3 games. That's out. So there's going to be tickets, probably going to be, there's select tickets, if you will. And the process will be in pod seating. Once the game is over, instead of that noon, 3:30 and 7, we're going to have to extend some time because they got to push all of those fans out, potentially sanitize locker rooms, and then bring the next game in. So the game tickets will be game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4, game 5. Nobody can congregate outside the Superdome. So we're going to work with pushing through the LHSAA app. Game 2 can proceed to the Superdome through gate, I don't know if it's gate G or gate D, whatever the gates are. So you got people leaving one way, coming in another way. All logistical stuff that we had a brief meeting on about an hour and a half down in New Orleans, which is not the main meeting we have before we go down there, just to kind of get a feel for what it's going to look like and see if they can pull it off. They can. So we've already had those preliminary conversations, but I've also had conversations with LSU for potentially playing outdoors. And Dan Gass has done a great job when we had those conversations with him. We've had conversations with Southeastern, and we've had conversations with Northwestern State, so that if we get outside, first of all, do we need an artificial surface to play multiple games versus if we do get some weather, a grass surface like Tiger Stadium, is that going to be an issue for games beyond games 1 and 2 or games 1, 2, 3, 4? And how many can we play? LSU now with men's basketball, is there going to be parking issues? Or can we, I mean, there's a lot. Everybody has stated that they can pull it off. I have to have a plan B. New in New Orleans, an extra piece of that is yes, Mayor Cantrell and what she can or can't do, or what she's able to do working with the medical experts down there. She's been working with the Saints. With, you know, I think they're up to 7,500 on any given number for us. Yeah, have we had 23 to 25,000 in that facility on a Friday, Saturday night? You witnessed it. Yes, we have. But that's not a single game ticket sale. That's people that carried over that sat there all day and wanted to watch 3 games. So we have no way of delineating that data to show that when we have that big 5A public school game on Saturday night, was that 10,000 tickets sold for that game, or was it 6,000? It wasn't delineated that way. But what I use for a gauge would be last year when Catholic High Baton Rouge played Rummel at Tulane the week before the Superdome Classic, the Prep Classic. They sold about 7,000 tickets for that game outdoors. So that gives me an idea, okay, and those 2 schools support and draw well. So that gives me an idea that we need potentially at least a 7,000 participant or capacity number to hold. Does that mean that we couldn't do it with 5,000? Sure, but those are all going to be online ticket sales. But we would try to maximize the most. And where I go back to, I'm kind of went through New York to get to your question here, is I remember what it felt like having no fans in the stands for state basketball at the Burton Center. That's part of it. Mom and dad getting to watch those seniors participate. And a lot of these kids now that are participating this year were juniors last year. They lost their spring sport if they're a spring sport participant. And now all of a sudden they can play their state championship game in football, not have any fans. Well, swimming just did it. You know, cross country, it's outdoors. So I got to take into consideration cross country. Basically, you can have fans wherever, you know, if you can get them around the course, but for the most part in that one stadium area. But if we have if we host this outdoors, then you can have more fans. And then look at stadium size, because outdoor 50% occupancy for high school stadiums or of such. And we did have some high schools that played games at Southeastern. We did have some high schools that played games at Northwestern State. We didn't have any that played at Tiger Stadium, but at Tiger Stadium, they're at a 25% occupancy, which is 25,000 people. Mm-hmm. So you could potentially send a single game ticket and put everybody in there. So all of that stuff, we're looking at it right now. Timeline, it's not fair to anybody that we potentially could not, if we don't go to the Superdome, then we're asking an outside facility to prepare for a prep classic, which is it's a big event in 30 days. If we wait till Thanksgiving, it's basically giving them 30 days to pull it together. Even if we wait till next Tuesday, it's only 34, 35 days. So at the end of the day, we've got to probably make this decision at the beginning of next week, prior to starting the playoffs if we can. I would hate to wait till after Thanksgiving, but I had that conversation this morning with my executive committee board president, Mr. Federico, down in the New Orleans area, you know, at Eco Classique. And we're going to talk later today. He also teaches, he's the principal, he does a lot at that school. So we're going to talk later today about that. But I would say within the next 5 to 7 calendar days, we'll probably need to make a decision on where we're gonna host that. But I did meet last with the Superdome last week, and I did send a communication to the mayor about 3 weeks ago asking potential guidance on what that attendance would look like. And as I sit here today, I've not had a response back from her. But obviously they've got the Saints, and you remember you got the Saints game on Christmas Day, our 3 games, and then Sugar Bowl. So we're sandwiched between 2 very large events, and hoping we can piggyback whatever those attendance numbers are, but those are up in the air again now with the most recent increase. Although Orleans Parish is less than 5% positivity. I think they're only at 3%, 2 or 3%. So the actual parish itself is good. It's just a matter of who's going to come in. But then Jefferson Parish right next door has a little higher positivity rate right now than anything else.
For all these challenges and the tough decisions, the tough questions, everything through all this, to see what you talked about, see some of those state championships wrap up, see the cross country kids, the swimming kids, the volleyball kids get those trophies. How much has that meant to see it reach that point, knowing that that's kind of what this work has been for?
And here's a quick answer. When I went up did a press conference on Wednesday at 2:00 for state swimming, working with their local convention authority, the local dignitaries. We had this press conference up there, and which is usual. When we go up there, we do something, for state wrestling, we do that. So it's protocol. So I went up there for that. There were two young ladies that were swimmers from the local area up there, and they had them speak. They came specifically to that press conference, not only to speak, but they wanted to come shake my hand and thank me for holding ground and holding on to hosting a state swim meet, even though the format was completely different. That in itself, Jared, was enough for me. That right there is the same with some video stream stuff. If one relative of an athlete who's protecting our country on foreign soil can watch a video stream to see their brother, their sister, their nephew, whatever relative participate in a state championship, and they're across on foreign soil, that's worth it for me for the video stream. Okay, so just those two girls telling me that. Miss Karen Hoyt said she had coaches and student athletes thank us for having that event because they didn't know for sure if they were going to have it. Mr. McDowell the same way with cross country. So it's been rewarding in the fashion that the kids deserve that. And I said that, and I don't know if you saw any of the sound bites or saw in the video from the press conference that I had up at swimming. The students have earned this, man. The parents have earned it. They need to compete. That's why it's an important piece of the educational process. I didn't get into this business to have regular seasons, although it's important, but the postseason is what they all kind of push for. Personal bests in swimming, whether they're in the top 25, they made the top 23 or whatever. At the end of the day, handing out the hardware is cool, but the experience is a good part of that. And that's what I said about the Superdome. The fact that they made it, and they don't like getting that second place trophy, but the fact that they made it to the Superdome or made it to the postseason in a historically very rich football state, to make it, to be the top two teams in your classification or your division, whether you're public or non-public. It's important. And if we stop today, let's just say something came up and we couldn't have the Prep Classic and it's just going to be an asterisk. Dude, we got an 8 football games. We did. We finished cross country. We finished swimming. We're finishing swimming. We finished volleyball. And now we got to move on to basketball and wrestling and how now we're moving into the friendly confines of young men rolling around together on a mat and the basketball, which I'm told by medical experts, we're going to have more COVID spread in basketball than we did in football, believe it or not. So right down to officials wearing a cover on their whistle. It's just, so far it's been, you got to celebrate small successes to get to where we are today and through tomorrow for state swimming, and knowing that we're on the precipice of starting the march to the Prep Classic and having everybody together this year for the Prep Classic again, having not all playing against each other, but having everybody under the same roof or in the same stadium, if you will. It's been successful. And as I started the interview with you way back, kids making sure they did the right thing, and even away from the stadiums and away from their ballparks, not to get COVID or spread it. Sometimes it's just inevitable. They didn't even know that their aunt or uncle had it. They didn't know, the aunt and uncle didn't know they had it, or they wouldn't have come to the crawfish boil, or wouldn't have come to the camp, the hunting camp. The coaches, we've had coaches get it. They didn't know they had it. But just the whole process. The trainers who spend more time, the athletic trainers spend more time with our athletes in our schools than anybody does. Them not contracting. I think I had one situation where an athletic trainer tested positive. Other than that, they've avoided it. And then, of course, going to school every day, all the classroom teachers, all the school administration, all the way to the top, including the state school boards and all those parish boards of having to deal with policies that they're not used to dealing with. State of Louisiana came together and pulled it off, man. So if it all ended today, we had a successful fall. Would it sit poorly with football people? Sure, me as well. But if it was the end, guess what, man? We got something. The kids, the seniors got to play, juniors got to play. We got to play some football, but I think we're going to be okay. Fingers crossed, and we'll get through the completion of the fall sports championship and look back at it and go, absolutely, man, we got that. Now let's concentrate on what we're going to do for winter. And my staff, our staff, we're always a sport ahead. So we're already talking about spring stuff. Are we going to be able to go to Lake Charles for baseball? Are we going to be able to go to LSU for state track? All good questions. And we're going to do the best we can. We're going to play state baseball and state softball and soccer, soccer and Hammond, state baseball and softball. Again, rumors, you talk about rumors changing stuff. We're playing baseball and softball in Lake Charles, Sulphur. We're going down there until they call me and say, Mr. Bonine, we don't have enough hotels with roofs on them yet. We don't have enough of eating establishments. Then we'll make a change. But until then, me to you today on the 20th of November, we have no reason why we're not going to play state basketball, boys basketball at the Burton Center down there in March Madness. Nor are we going to move baseball and softball. Is state track going to be at LSU? We'll know. We'll know more about that when we get there, depending on what's going on when we get to that point, on what's going on in EBR and the mayor and what decisions are being made for that here. So we're already talking spring and we're not through with fall yet. So we're trying to work our way through all of that and remain as positive as possible and make as good experience as we can for not only the athletes, the officials, but also the fans.
Awesome. That seems as logical and full circle of a place to kind of wind down. And I definitely appreciate you taking some time this morning and going through all that with me. I know it's a hectic time in the LHSAA calendar every year, and certainly now has all of its extra curveballs.
Those who can't hit curveballs, run track, right? And I got Adam sitting over here. He goes, yeah, those guys out there keep turning left, just left. Of course, I use kid, but watching all those kids run cross country, we had beautiful weather up there, man, and no major incidents. But I always give Adam a hard time about that. But I'd call them curveballs. But you know what? At the end of the day, if you use the baseball analogy, we're always all looking for that 95-mile-an-hour fastball. You can't adjust to it. You can always try to keep your hands back and adjust for that breaking ball, but you can't be looking breaking ball because if you do, fastballs by you. So we're always trying to keep our eye on that ball that's coming high and hard, and I think we're going to be fine doing that. And I got a great staff doing it, and appreciate y'all what you do. Anything you know how to get a hold of me if you need anything. But I think media-wise has understood this. I think I'd be remiss today if a Hall of Famer, Robin Fambro is on it. Our compadres at ESPN, all across the state, everybody that writes for us, the Ken Trahans, the Ed Daniels, the Adam Hunsuckers, I'm not leaving somebody out, but you know what I'm saying? All of those people around the state that understand that, and I think have done a good job with that. So kudos to all of you in the media as well, because it's not easy for you either, because what you publish today may not be what's going to happen tomorrow, and then you got to regroup. But I always appreciate you and what you've done and how you've actually. I'm an old school guy as a reporter. You always find out before you get on the keyboard, and I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, man. Again, he's Eddie Bonine, the Executive Director of the Louisiana High School Athletic Association, and hopefully we'll be seeing you pretty soon. I mean, I know you'll be out there, but hopefully we're all getting together for some state championships in football in just a couple weeks.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Eddie.